Yo, did you miss us? Nah, because you watched yesterday's episode of
Exactly.
First Strike Preview here. So going to be another episode, First Strike Preview. Me, Josh, Sideshow, Wilkinson, the biggest head in the game. Today, we're going to talk about a team most likely a lot of you guys already know. But if you don't know, we're here to fill you in so you don't look stupid around your friends. It is Cloud9 Valorant. This has been a team that, well, Cloud9 is an organization, right? They got into Valorant extremely early.
Yeah, so early.
Multiple teams, a team here in NA, a team in Korea, too.
Yeah.
And obviously this features TenZ, one of the players I think most casual Fortnite players, Valorant players know. It's just that he seems to be. I almost said Fortnite because he almost seems like the most like kind of ninja Fortnite-esque player, right? Where he kind of transcends like professional play and just kind of content creation for this game.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he's so good that he's really well known outside of the professional Valorant scene. So, that's the biggest reason to be a fan of Cloud9, honestly, is that they have arguably the best player in the world on their team. I mean, some people will certainly make the argument that TenZ is the best player in the world.
Do you think he is?
I don't personally. And the reason is that I don't think that you can take someone that's just incredible individually. The thing is, there is a really valid argument, but I think there's a valid argument for a bunch of other people as well. Like, for example, Sinatra over on Sentinels or Ardis over on G2. These kind of guys, I mean, you could even make an argument for Mixwell from G2 and considering what he's done before in the past too, when he was playing in the beta. But I think that before we get some big competition, it's difficult to say. And also,
can you say he's the most mechanically gifted?
You could definitely make that argument. I mean, TenZ has put up some bonkers statistics, and the way that he plays is so fun to watch. That's the other reason why he's the most popular player. I'll go out on a limb and say that he's the most popular player, at least in North American Valorant. He is not only put up some truly absurd numbers, you won't see many other players above a 1 kill per round. That means every single round, he is giving you a kill. On average, he's going to deliver you 1 kill per round. And then he's got 0.99 on his Reyna, 0.98 on his Raze, 0.93 on a Viper that he's played 3 times as well. What is this on Sage? Don't even know when he played that. But all of his KDs are absurd.
I was going to say, look at his
KDs
across these agents. 1.40 on the Jett, 1.31 on Raze, 1.44 on the Reyna.
Yeah.
A 1.30 on Viper.
It's just silly.
Sage, what the fuck happened there? 1.45. And then, by the way, it was one time on Phoenix. I'll just drop a 1.71. Like, that is just bonkers numbers.
It's ridiculous.
And the thing that it is like, so it's easy to have. I don't want to say it's easy. Well, let me kind of back. You can have these performances and have a small sample size, right?
Yeah.
We have a large sample size here. This is not a this is not a 2-tournament Andy, just kind of popping off. We have a very large sample size. We've seen some bad games, but the consistency though is usually tremendous.
Yeah, it's
usually like
wild, the consistency actually.
Level.
Because the thing is, sometimes you'll be watching a Cloud9 game and you're like, man, TenZ isn't really having the same impact you normally expect him to have. And you look at the stats at the end of the game and you're like, well, actually, he's still top fragged and he still put up like something like 180 180 ADR. And you're like, oh, all right, well, he was clearly still the best player in the server, and you felt like he was having a bad game. The expectations for this guy are so high because he delivers God mode performances.
It's kind of like LeBron James, bro.
All the time.
Just godlike all the time, and it's almost like people, and I think the community almost just trying to take it for granted at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like, you notice the games that he doesn't pop off way more now because it's so easy to just look at their games and be like, oh yeah, 10 just went out of control. That the games where he doesn't go out of control are just so noticeable that like
I want to show you this. I want to show you this screen as well, Matt, because this is I haven't changed anything here. This is just all time So we're not limiting it to any kind of time frame. We're just saying all time, who's got the best stats in Valorant. And I don't care if you've been playing against some Timmies in your qualifier games, which, by the way, TenZ hasn't. He's played a lot of his games in invitationals against top-tier opponents in North America. And who's that at the top with 1,773 rounds played? It's TenZ with an average of nearly 300 combat score. I'm just putting up silly numbers.
An average, bro. That is just... You have one game with a 300 combat score, and people are like, "What in the fuck?" To average that,
yeah.
What is like the
silly.
What is the second highest there? Pretty much.
I mean, the second highest is a guy from Brazil called Mauzera, and he's really good as well. These two Brazilian players, actually.
I mean, from Gamelanders, that guy.
Yeah, this guy's from Gamelanders. This guy's from B4. These two are also incredible talents within their region, and TenZ still is just bopping them. The top, the ACS here is incredibly high. I mean, the KD is maybe not quite as high as some of these other guys because he plays Jett and he's entrying a lot of the time for the rest of his team. But I mean, the ADR that he's putting up is ridiculous. 170 ADR. That means every round he's getting a kill plus a bit of damage in terms of the damage that he's doing. But I also want to draw your attention as well to first kill per round. This might not seem like a high number because it's only 0.2, but that means every 5 rounds, TenZ is going to give you a pick. Like that's incredibly high on average, especially because he's not going to give you the first pick on defensive rounds as much because he's maybe he will if he's playing the op, to be honest, but it's just absurd. You can see that the average numbers here are somewhere between the very best players in the world, somewhere between 0.1 and then 0.2, and he sat at a 0.21. There's just no one. It's just magical. The guy's unbelievably good.
Yeah, it's just can the team get wins, right? And I mean, you even look at his KD, the 1.39 is nothing to kind of scoff at.
No,
I mean, that is extremely good as well. Kind of puts him in like the middle, but still he's played so much more really than a lot of other players. I mean, 1,700 rounds, a ton of game time. Does his star power set unreal expectations for this Cloud9 team sometimes, or kind of raise their expectations, I feel like? Because
totally.
To me, seeing him beyond like any roster I feel like he's going to be on is going to be expected to compete at the highest or win. And sometimes I feel like that could kind of be a detriment to a team like Cloud9.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely I've raised this argument before, is any team that has TenZ on it should be expected to win championships because you have arguably the best player in the world on your team. So of course you should be expected to be competing for and winning certain tournaments. And Cloud9 haven't really. It's been TSM and it's been Sentinels within North America. And Cloud9 are left as this third place team that, despite having TenZ just literally hard carry them at times, they haven't been able to put up anywhere near the same results as those other two rosters. And that really bothers me because the way that Cloud9 was built was that TenZ was a player that was already signed to the organization and then happened to be the best, potentially, in the world at Valorant. So, like, they've kind of lucked into a situation,
stumbled into it.
Yeah, where they have this elite level superstar player in every sense of the word on their team, and they've tried to build a roster around him. And the way that they did that was not, let's try and build a roster that we think is going to demolish. They didn't try and build a super team. They put him with people that he had played with before in the past. So they picked up Shinobi, who had played alongside him. Vice had played with Shinobi a little bit, and I think Mitch had played with the two of them before in a former game. I think Relics had maybe played with one of them again in a team. So it's like, it's not a full team from CS that they've put together, but it's people that have played with each other on teams in the past, in duos or trios, and they've just kind of added them together. And to say that TenZ is the best player on this team would be a massive understatement. He has had moments where he is getting 40% of the kills. I mean, if any of our viewers are from Overwatch, that is almost what we would refer to as a Fledder deadlift, where you are actually hard carrying your team to victory. You're putting up 40% of the kills of your entire roster. That's absurd levels. And he's done that across 3 or 4 different maps.
I will say, though, if there's anybody who can put up these type of performances and carry a team through an event like First Strike, it is TenZ.
Sure, of course it is.
And also with the format that First Strike will have for the qualifiers, best of ones, he's just got to pop off of that one map. Don't have to do it over an extended series like a BO3.
Yeah.
Just has to do it once.
But he might have to do it in every BO1.
May have to do it in every BO1.
That's a lot of consistency to ask from your star player. And this is why I have a love-hate relationship with Cloud9. I love watching TenZ play. I love actually some of the ways that they move around the map and like their calling that comes from Shinobi. On Ascent in particular, it's their best map. They look really good at it. They rotate around the map very well. I love watching them explode with Mitch, who's managed to pick up the Jett recently, despite, normally he would be playing more supportive roles for the team. They have a lot of really cool things and a lot of fun ways of playing the game. But I hate watching them sometimes because the rest of these guys can't frag at the same level as TenZ with consistency. Mitch is probably the second best player on this team.
Yes, I would say so.
Plays the Killjoy, plays the Jett when it comes to Haven. And then it falls off a cliff in terms of the fragging.
Relic has moments.
Relic definitely does have moments. He's had some great moments on the Omen in the past. He seems to be transitioning to the Raze, which has given him much more consistency. But he's not... These guys aren't in your top 10 and probably not in your top 20, some of them, when it comes to players in North America. And so you've got this frustrating situation where you feel like TenZ is being handicapped, but then sometimes each player steps up. Like Mitch will give you a god tier performance, then Relics will give you a god tier performance. Shinobi in one of the games in the Pop Flash Invitational was out of control.
God tier,
and he's normally a really weak fragger for the team, and he had this one match where he just went explosive, and I was like, please just show me that on a more consistent basis, and Cloud9 will win. But they hurt me, Matthew. They hurt me over and over.
I mean, that TenZ is so good that if they just get one other player to just turn it on, they're good, right? It's just it never seems to be the same player. They can never kind of get everybody going at the same time.
Definitely.
And I think that's what you saw in the Renegades was actually interesting. TenZ didn't really have, he didn't have a bad tournament, but he didn't have one of these ones where you kind of like put together like huge games and whatnot. You saw Mitch play good. I thought Mitch played really well on the Killjoy in the Renegades tournament. And I thought Vice had a really good tournament. But without the firepower of TenZ to just kind of go mega in the positive department, you can't get past a team like Immortals, which just formed, right? So I think that's where the worry would lie if you're a Cloud9 fan is, okay, we can ride TenZ, but when TenZ has, an off game, which will happen to any player every once in a while, who is there?
Exactly.
From what it seems like, they need like 3 people to be there to make up for it. Will they get that type of play out of, you're really looking at what? Mitch, Relics and Vice to be able to do that.
Definitely. I mean,
can you get that level?
Shinobi is the classic IGL that doesn't really frag very hard. The guy he's a former CS player, but he was also a coach as well. He'd already kind of stepped back from being a player in CS. I don't know the reasons why, because I didn't follow his CS career, but I would imagine the way that it normally goes is because you can't hang mechanically with these guys anymore, so you end up taking a coaching position instead. That is speculation from my part, because like I said, I didn't follow his career, but that's how it usually goes. But Shinobi's come back into being this the IGL for his team. And I want to show the difference here, because this is the game I was talking about where the guy went 28-16 with 127 ADR and a 35% headshot accuracy. These are good stats, right? If Shinobi was playing like this all the time, my God, this team would be powerful. They kind of destroyed Dignitas in this game at Pop Flash. But Shinobi's normal statistics are like 0.56, 0.57 KPR. These are some of the lowest stats from any tier 1 Valorant player, and that's mitigated somewhat. He doesn't need to be incredible,
No, he doesn't
because
need to,
he's the IGL. But still, like, these are extremely low average stats, and yet even he can sometimes have a match where he just goes off. And the other players on the team as well, like Mitch and Relics, for example. Look at Mitch and Relics. Mitch, when he was playing the Sage, was only putting up 0.67 KPR. Like, these are not good numbers. On the Killjoy, however, he has really pushed those up, and he plays the Jett on Haven, and those have really pushed up as well. So Mitch has now really grown into his position as the secondary player on this Cloud9 team. And Relics has started to find more consistency as well.
I think where they look the best in the Renegades tournament is with Mitch on the Killjoy, Relics on the Raze, and then when TenZ was able to play the Reyna. And just kind of have him go, right? Follow him up, use the Leer with the Boombot, clear out areas, put pressure, take map control in certain parts of the map, and let him just take the aim duels and dominate, right? How can you force more scenarios like that is probably like what Cloud9 goes to. And I don't know how much we should be looking into their performance during Renegades. You saw TenZ on Twitter kind of talk about the micro stuttering. That is a thing in the game right now. If you're playing Valorant, there are like times of micro stuttering. I know I was getting some last night.
I've actually never had it, thankfully. I've never had that.
So I wasn't having it, and then I started to get it. And I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. Because originally I was just like, oh, this is just player BS on Twitter, you know. But then I started to get it, and I was like, oh, okay, this is legitimate. Where I don't know how heavily you should judge them off of Renegades. It seems like they're potentially saving some things for First Strike. And I think this is a team where, I mean, anything outside of top 8.
Oh, yeah. If they don't make top 8, it really is a disaster. I mean, it must be said, although Cloud9 themselves are quite an inconsistent team because they haven't been able to find that second, third player to step up and help TenZ in a lot of the games. Because of that issue, they have oscillated wildly between top placements in tournaments and bombing out in certain tournaments as well. You can see some of the teams that they've lost to. I mean, they lost the BO1 to Andbox as well, who ended up winning the tournament. But in the Pop Flash Invitational, they lost to Envy, as well as they are expected to lose to Sentinels. They lose to TSM, but they also lose a BO1 to Immortals. They lose a BO3 to Immortals, a BO3 to Envy as well. But they've also beaten all of these teams at various different times. And they beat TSM as well, actually, which is the other big reason why people rate Cloud9 so highly, is that they beat TSM with some level of consistency. But this lack of consistency within their team has hurt them, but they are still considered the number 3 team in North America because they still reach the peaks that other teams haven't been able to.
Yes. So what you do see from them, which is what you like to see from teams, especially if you're a fan of them, they are pretty consistently beating the teams they're supposed to beat. The teams that they lose to, when you look at like Envy, right? They make that really deep run at Pop Flash. They lose to Andbox in a best of 1, and then they lose to Immortals here and Renegades. Both those teams make the finals with Andbox winning it. So it does seem like consistently the teams they do lose to end up going on to play really well deep in the tournament against a lot of other teams. It's not like they are losing to Andbox and Andbox is getting blown out by the Moon Recruits.
No, you're right.
Gaming, right? They are losing to teams that are placing well in these tournaments, and for the most part, they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat in a lot of scenarios, right? I do worry though that as teams get more footage, teams kind of because we've just seen a lot of teams start to really kind of implement consistent coaching sessions and whatnot. Teams start to be able to use that coaching and preparation to game plan against Cloud9 and really put a bottleneck on TenZ and what they like to do and things
because
like
if you find a good way of shutting down TenZ, you have most of the time shut down Cloud9. Now that might change. Yeah, that might change a little in the future as Mitch has really grown into his role a bit more and Relics is playing much more Raze. So hopefully Mitch and Relics are going to be able to add much more consistency to their gameplay. But there isn't really another team in the whole of North America where you shut down one player and you've got a great game plan for how to beat them. You can maybe say Wardell on TSM, but even then, Drone is another elite tier player, and Sabros is pretty good as well.
We saw it a little bit with Immortals, which shot up this week when teams are able to limit his impact. You saw Immortals really kind of hit a standstill, right?
Yeah, with their new
But yeah, I
team,
mean,
that could be an option. But it's been a
but
consistent thing with Cloud9.
yes, like you mentioned though, like if you were going up against Cloud9, you were like strategizing against them. If I was like the coach, I'd be like, look, we will be okay losing this series, losing it to Mitch, losing it to Vice. You know, having one of those players just pop off and just take over. Uh, we will not allow TenZ to just run over us, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like you'll take your chances. Like if you can kind of put him in a box and really kind of deny him the spots that he likes to go to, and take away that space and force other players to make plays and beat you. If you lose that way, you're as a team, you just kind of have to like, yeah, they were the better team, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think to lose to them by just allowing TenZ to just run all over you with like the Reyna is just a bad way to go out. Now, it's easier said than done.
Yeah,
Not
it
a lot of
definitely
teams
is.
will have that player who can take those aim duels with him head to head and 50-50 him, right?
Sure.
I mean, there's not many teams that can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a strategic thing for sure. And they're a very fun team to watch. I mean, they should be trying to get to the semifinals minimum of First Strike.
Top 5 for sure.
Yeah,
That should be the goal of this team.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. They're one of the teams that really can't afford to not be placing in the top 8. The consistency, winning the BO1s and that kind of stuff. Most of the time, I think they're going to be able to get through with the players that they have, and unless TenZ has an awful tournament, they should be good to be able to get deep in it.
Here's a hot take. This is a team that you need to look out for in First Strike and the first qualifier to qualify. If they do not qualify in the first qualifier, there is going to be an unreal amount of pressure on this team to qualify through the second one.
And the second one is where we have Sky and Icebox available.
Right. And that opens up a whole box of who knows what happens, right? So for me, this is a team that almost more important than any other needs to qualify that first go. Because if they don't, it's going to be a ton of pressure on TenZ, ton of pressure on the rest of the team in a short turnaround, only a week turnaround to fix some of these things. Also, they're going to be giving teams a week worth of footage, if they've held on to stuff to be able to go back, look over, game plan, strategize against. And the pressure may be too much. Like even a team like Sentinels, right? Like if they lose that first qualifier in some like freak scenario, even if they were to lose the second one, you're like, it was just a bad tournament for them. Like we've seen them be so consistent, or you still believe in them. There's not as much pressure, right? For them to qualify. You kind of know that it'll happen. This is a team that kind of ends up in that water of like, a game against Andbox to qualify, like the second week, all that pressure, like it becomes a little bit of like a 50-50 type of game.
I mean, 8 of the teams will be taken out of the second qualifier though, right? Like 8 of the best teams in North America won't be in the second qualifier until the final portion.
No,
they won't be in the open qualifier.
4 of them won't be.
Yeah.
Well, actually, not 8, because I guess you'll have 8 qualify, 4 qualify, and then 4 kind of sit out.
Yeah.
So, but they'll still have to beat some of those teams who. If you get top 5 through 8 in the first qualifier, you don't have to play in the second open one. You just have the time to sit around the bracket. That gives you so much time to sit around, make new strategies, figure out which team you're going to play almost, right? Kind of give yourself more of an opportunity to strategize, right?
Yeah.
So it's a team where they have lofty expectations. In the FaZe video we talked about, like, hey, FaZe, you feel great about 10 through 16, right? This is not it. This team has been around for a while. They've had really good results. They have a star player, one of the biggest star players in the scene, arguably with Sinatra, probably the 1 and 2. If you're somebody coming from outside of Valorant, or you just play Valorant casually, you have probably heard of Sinatra and TenZ. Like those are the 2 players you definitely would have heard about. Sinatra, TenZ, Wardell would be like the 3, right? That you would know. You gotta put up a good performance. I think top 5 is where you're looking at. Like semifinals, you feel great. Maybe even like a 5-6, right? You're like on the cusp. And you lose a close game.
At the same time, though, Matt, what I want to point out here is we've been very kind of, hedging our bets, saying how much Cloud9 have not quite been able to make it this far. or not quite been able to get the championships thus far, and sometimes lacking the consistency, whatever. Cloud9 are also a team that could win. They genuinely are. Like, if TenZ just turns up, there's no one that can stop TenZ. When he's on his A game, he's unstoppable. He is a God mode player and will turn the server around. And if he's having those kind of games towards the end of the First Strike playoffs, Cloud9, you can forget about what's happened before. If they win First Strike, that is a monumental achievement for this team.
And you just need one other player. Like, if he's playing that well, you just need one other player to be on, right? And I think Mitch's play in Renegades, like we mentioned, is something to really keep an eye on. He was very good. Strong. I thought Relics had moments as well. Like, maybe this team is headed more in an upwards trajectory than we think. Like, regardless of the Renegades results, you did see some positive signs, and you did see some adjustments from them, right? They were running the Jett a lot early on. They adjusted to the Reyna. They looked better against like teams like Immortals. Maybe the Reyna is something they have planned for First Strike, and they didn't really want to bring it out in Renegades. They wanted to just see how far they can get, playing with the Jett. Maybe they want to kind of show their hand. And then about halfway through, they're like, man, we don't want to lose out here. Like, let's kind of go with what we've been practicing.
Yeah.
And really go for it. This is a team that would probably hold on to some stuff. Like we mentioned in a lot of the Plat Valorant episodes, Renegades did not have a ton of tier 1 teams. You were really looking at what Gen.G, Cloud9 really is the two phase, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, Immortals would be higher.
Immortals too, yeah. Immortals would be higher. So there wasn't really a need for them to go all out, right? They could have just kind of ran with what they ran with, and they would probably beat most of the teams in it.
Yeah. And
they lose to the 2 teams that make it to the finals. And the game against Immortals is close, right?
Yes, it was. It was an incredibly good game, actually. If you haven't caught it, that was definitely the game to go back and watch, because it was a great performance from them.
And although they do lose a BO1 to Andbox a little bit earlier, Cloud9 makes the finals. They could easily like kick it up another gear, right? And we could easily be sitting here talking them about the First Strike, about the Renegades champions.
Sure.
They win this series against Immortals. They could have, definitely given it to Andbox in a BO3.
Yeah. We don't know for sure. I mean, Andbox won the BO1 against them earlier, but we don't know how that BO3 would have played out.
Game
sure.
That they won.
Yeah, and I mean, Cloud9 haven't really worked on their map pool in the same way. They're not favored to win First Strike by any means, but they do have upset potential against the top teams. They've upset TSM many times before. If TenZ goes off, anything is possible. This team is a bit of a wild beast. You never quite know what to expect from them. Play a bunch of wonky comps. But if TenZ can perform at his top God mode level, and you get one of Mitch or Relics performing at a top level as well, they can beat anyone.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why you would want to be a fan of them going into First Strike, though. Yeah. Like, they are not the Sentinels, TSM kind of.
You don't want to be like the glory supporter where you're just coming in to support the favorite. Well, you want
they're the overwhelming favorite. They have these like super strong, like top to bottom rosters, like super team type of built like things. Where Cloud9, they can compete with them, but they compete in a different manner, right? They have one like superstar player, and then they rely on, one or two of their other players kind of outplaying expectations, and then also playing creatively around, TenZ and some of their players. So it's a team that they need to enable their star player to pop off, and they also kind of need to win the mental game. But God, when he pops off, it is fun to watch. I mean, there is I would go to say there's no, maybe like how flashy like Wardell can get at times.
Oh yeah, Wardell's a lot of fun as well.
But I mean, when TenZ is on, there is almost no Valorant player like it that you can watch.
Yeah, definitely. He's one of the most fun to watch, and that I think is why so many people are fans of him as well. Incredibly mechanically skilled, brain works at a different speed. He's an absolute freak. It's a lot of fun to watch him. And yeah, if you're interested in watching Cloud9, you can catch them as they go towards the First Strike North American event, which is going to be starting on October the 26th, I think, right? I think that's the date. I don't know. Yeah, so Cloud9 are going to be making a run through that. We are going to be producing a bunch more First Strike preview videos as well on a range of different
subscribe to the
teams.
channel.
Yeah, smash that subscribe button. Like,
make sure you get notifications.
Yeah, turn on
the bell. And then when you get the notification, forward the email to everybody you know.
Like one of those chain forwarded emails you get from your grandma.
Yeah,
it's like forward.
When her phone is hacked and she's just spamming you with emails, and you know it's not your grandmother. But
yeah, let everybody know about Plat Chat Valorant. We are producing a bunch of different First Strike preview videos to get you guys familiar with the scene. Got a bunch more coming up as well. But this was Cloud9.